What's good, YouTubers and YouTubettes? This is JBsports back again with another one. One of the top pound-for-pound fighters in boxing, unified welterweight champion Errol Spence Jr. is in search for an opponent due to the fact that his much-anticipated, undisputed matchup with WBO welterweight champion Terrence Crawford fell by the wayside. The fight did not come to fruition. And in my opinion, the reason why the fight didn't come to fruition was that Terrence Crawford was getting big guarantees in his last two contracts with Top Rank Boxing, huge upfront money, and he wasn't willing to accept no guarantee for what he felt was the biggest fight in boxing. With all that being said, he left Errol Spence Jr. standing at the altar. Was negotiations between the two parties dragged on for months and months. All in the meanwhile, he was negotiating a side deal with David Avanesian to fight on BLK Prime. And now he has a fight lined up for December 10th in his hometown of Omaha, Nebraska. We'll see what happens with that fight, what kind of numbers they do for that fight, because as we know, Terrence Crawford, up to this point, has failed to become a pay-per-view star. He is one of the top fighters in boxing. But as far as traction in boxing, he has not measured up. With all that being said, it had been reports coming out here that Errol Spence Jr. was going to be fighting on December 17th in Dallas, Texas, home of the Dallas Cowboys, AT&T Stadium. And his opponent was going to be Keith Thurman, former unified welterweight champion. Now, outside of the Crawford fight, that's the biggest money fight available for Errol Spence Jr. Now, he can move up to 154, as he has said that he's had problems making the weight of 147. He's been killing his body, manipulating his body to make 147, and he was willing to do it one last time to chase greatness, chase history, add to his legacy, and fight for undisputed at 147 pounds. Now that fight is not happening next, in my opinion, it's doubtful if that fight ever happens again due to the bridge burning by Terrence Crawford. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. Now, Errol Spence Jr. came out on Twitter a couple of days ago and announced that his protege, Frank Martin, will be fighting on December 17th versus Michelle Rivera. That's a very good fight. Rivera is a top 10 lightweight. We're going to find out a lot about Frank Martin. We're going to find out a lot about Michelle Rivera, because Michelle Rivera is a very offensive-minded fighter, but he takes a lot of punches. You look at his last fight, he fought on the undercard of the Wilder Helenius fight. He got hit a lot in that fight. It's a good thing that he has a good chin, or the opponent he was fighting didn't have no power, because he got hit a lot in that fight. He dominated the fight, but he caught too many punches, and that could be to his demise when you're facing a guy with the power and accuracy of Frank Martin. So we will see what happens. We will see what transpires. But that's not the fight that the boxing public was hoping to see. They was assuming that Errol Spence Jr. will be fighting Terrence Crawford on that date, and that doesn't seem to be the case. And a lot of people will pretty much assume that Thurman versus Spence was a foregone conclusion. But from what I'm hearing, my source is telling me that Errol Spence Jr. really ain't keen on fighting Keith Thurman, but he knows that's probably the best available fight for him at 147. He sticks around at 147. If he doesn't take that fight, then he probably, in all likelihood, will move up to 154. And if he's still trying to make the Terrence Crawford fight, he will not want to move up to 154 and then try to move back down to 147 and take on Terrence Crawford. That would be out of the same blueprint as Roy Jones when he became the heavyweight champion, defeating Ruiz, and he moved back down to light heavyweight and fought Tarver, and he never was the same fighter from that point on. With all that being said, what Errol Spence Jr. is doing is he's waiting on the WBC to call the mandatory. He's not going to help Keith Thurman out at all, not even a little bit, as far as giving Keith Thurman the payday that he probably want to get for fighting Spence. The mandatory contender in the WBC will get 30% in a fight that's ordered by the WBC. The champion will get 70%, so it'll be a 70-30 split. It will put a cap on what Keith Thurman can make in a fight with Spence. And Spence will be looking to stick it to Keith Thurman because he still feels some type of way about Keith Thurman not fighting him when Thurman was unified welterweight champion and was the top dog in the welterweight division. So that's what's going on right now. You got the WBC convention going on right now. It started November 6th. It'll be going on all the way through November 11th. So in the next couple of days, you should be hearing the WBC order Spence versus Thurman. They're going to be doing a lot of orders. They're going to order some other fights, but that's definitely the biggest fight to be ordered at the WBC convention. And they'll be ordering that. And again, it'll be a 70-30 split in Spence's favor. And if the fight goes to a purse bid, now if they can't come to agreement and it goes to a purse bid, then Thurman will have a cap on what he can make. He'll be getting 30% of whatever person wins the purse bid, whether it be TGB Promotions or Mayweather Promotions, or you can have an outside party come bid on the fight. You can have Matchroom Boxing bid on that fight. You can have Golden Boy bid on that fight. You can have Queensberry Promotion bid on that fight. You can have BLK Prime bid on that fight. So you have a whole lot of outside parties. Who was that promotion company that bid on Regis Prograis versus Jose Zepeda? They won that purse bid, came out of nowhere. It was called Narv Nation, whatever the name is. They could come bid on the fight. So that'll open up the doors for a lot of different promotional entities to bid on Spence versus Thurman. So we will see what happens. And we will see what transpires. This has been a disappointing year for the sport of boxing. Early on in the year, we had some good fights, but the last several months of 2022 has been a disappointment. Outside of the all-women's female card featuring Clarissa Shields versus Savannah Marshall, and then you had a great co-main event with Michaela Mailer taking on Alicia Bumgarner. Outside of that, it's been a dud as far as great fights getting made in the sport of boxing. So we will see what happens and we will see what transpires. But let me say this. Frank Martin versus Michelle Rivera, that is a good fight. That is a good fight. When that fight first got announced, I was thinking, okay, well, maybe that's going to be, maybe they might do a day-night doubleheader, kind of like what they did with the Charlo twins. Jamal Charlo headlining the day card and Jamel Charlo headlining the night portion of the card. They did basically a day-night doubleheader. I was thinking maybe they do that with Errol Spence Jr., but the reason why I don't think that's probably not going to happen is Frank Martin is fighting in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So he's fighting in Minneapolis, Minnesota. As we know, the reports were saying that Errol Spence Jr. will be fighting Thurman in Cowboy Stadium. So I don't think that will be a little bit too expensive for the PBC to be putting that money up, staging two fights in two different locations. They used to do that back in the day, man. You remember when Mayweather was fighting in Las Vegas and they had Canelo fighting, and I believe in Mexico and another location, maybe LA, I can't remember, and they would do like a split pay-per-view. Basically almost like Canelo was headlining his own card, but he was coming on before Mayweather, which was the ultimately main event headliner. He was fighting later on that night in Las Vegas. That's the last time they did it, and that was about, 10 years ago? So they haven't done anything like that before since then. So they haven't ever done anything like that since then. So I don't think they're going to be doing that now. Where we at in boxing right now. The economic situation of boxing is not the same as it was back then and what it is right now. So we will see what happens. And we will see what transpires. But that's what's going on with the whole Errol Spence Jr. Keith Thurman situation. It's not the fact that the fight's not going to happen. A lot of people saying, well, he don't want to fight Thurman. He's probably going to fight Ennis, so he's going to probably fight his WBA mandatory Stellonis. Stellonis is out the picture. He ain't fighting Stellonis. There ain't no money into it. The PBC ain't keen on that fight. Stellonis is not a PBC fighter. He's with Probellum. It's nothing attractive about that fight. I think it's basically down to Thurman, and it's an outside slim chance it could be Ennis. But from what I'm hearing, Ennis is going to be fighting Mario Barrios. That's another nugget that I'm giving you guys right now. I'm hearing that he's fighting Mario Barrios, and he'll be fighting either at the end of 2022 or the early part of 2023. Now, the PBC has basically 4 dates reserved at the MGM Grand Arena in Las Vegas. There's some more nuggets that I'm giving you guys. They got January 7th, January 28th, February 4th, March 18th, and May 6th. Now, March 18th and May 6th, they basically is an option. It could either be, it ain't both of them. It's either March 18th or May 6th. the PBC want to stage Wilder versus Ruiz. If Canelo is unavailable for May, then you'll get Wilder versus Ruiz May 6th. If Canelo is available to come back in May, and there's a lot of different reports coming out saying he could be available for May, that's according to Eddie Hearn, man. I don't know why Eddie Hearn is speaking for Canelo like he still got a contract with Canelo, but he's saying he could be ready for May. But from what I'm hearing, people close to Canelo saying he's not going to be ready for May. He's coming back in September. And if that is indeed the case, you're going to get Wilder versus Ruiz May 6th. And then again, you got those other 3 dates, February 4th, January 28th, which is already reserved for Jermell Charlo to defend his WBC, WBA, WBO, and IBF titles versus Tim Tszyu. And I'm very excited for that fight. I think it's going to be a very good fight. You got Charlo, who has power in both hands. He lays on the ropes a little bit too much for my liking. And you have a guy that's a come-forward fighter, bringing the pressure, throwing punches and punches, and Tim Tszyu. So I think it's a very good stylistic matchup, and I think it's going to be a very entertaining fight. So that's basically booked for the 28th. So you basically got January 7th. And I was hearing that could be the date for Jose Benavidez, David Benavidez, to take on Caleb Plant in a fight that's been talked about for at least 3 years. And that fight has finally been finalized. That could take place January 7th. And then you still have February 4th. That's the weekend before the Super Bowl. 8 days before the Super Bowl. You know, you're going to have nothing going on. That'll be that kind of like that little bye week. You got the AFC, NFC Conference Championship games coming on the week before that. And then you have the 2-week break between the Conference Championship games and the Super Bowl. So that's a good week to have a big-time event. Now, that could be the date for Spence versus Thurman. That could be fruition. I just think that Plant Benavidez and Keith Thurman versus Spence, I think those fights going to be the next 2 fights for the date of January 7th and February 4th. I don't know which is going to get lined up with what date. You know, they might put Plant Benavidez January 7th and put Spence Thurman February 4th, or they might do it vice versa. Put Spence Thurman January 7th and put Plant Benavidez February 4th. And then again, you have Wilder Ruiz, which will be going down either March 18th or May 6th. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. Now, Bruce Ennis, he has his own deal with Showtime Boxing. A lot of people speculating that he could be the co-main event to Michelle Rivera versus Ryan Martin. I don't think that's going to be the case. Some people saying he could be the co-main event for Spence versus Thurman. Now, I can see that maybe being the case. He being the co-main event, you know, and then he calling out the winner after he wins his fight. I can see that happening much more than him being the co-main event to Ryan Martin versus Michelle Rivera. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. Follow me on Facebook, Gerard.Briscoe.3551. Like, share, and subscribe to JB Sports. The man, the myth, the legend. And I holla.